Hello. Hi, Rob. You made it.
How are you, Henrik? I did.
Um,
I'm
I'm,
skipping on two other meetings to be here.
oh man, that's an honor. I'm very good at you.
I'm doing fine. It's a nice day here. I'm enjoying the sunshine.
It's just sunshine or it's a heat wave as it is all across Europe, at least Southern
It's
Europe.
it's not too bad. It's hotter than I like it, but it's not ridiculous. Uh,
All right, yeah, but you also have this heat wave, right? So we have, I'm not sure whether you follow the fires in Greece.
mm,
And so I'm going to fly out on my vacation into basically the hotspot of the heat wave to Sardinia. So
oh no.
looking forward to 44 degrees starting this Thursday. But yeah,
Looking forward to.
mm, well, I will not be moving much. So the room has air conditioning. There is a pool, breakfast included.
Very nice.
So I think I will nevertheless enjoy. All right, so let's get into it if you don't mind. I was
Please.
hoping John can made it, but let's see, maybe he shows up in a second. And just the two of us, maybe we can be incredibly productive if we go through the to-do items
Oops.
that I came up with that I keep for a little bit of time as well. So let me share my screen maybe.
Okay.
And then I walk you through the different comments. You should see me now, right? The first, do you see my screen now? Yes, looks like. Maybe I can also zoom in. Right. So the first comment I wanted to discuss, so I really hesitate, clicking away comments and input from others. So, right, this is why I really prefer having discussed this and mentioned this at least to one single person. So you're the lucky one today. So you just need to nod, and then I approve the comments and changes, or the lack of changes, because I think how it was before was better. So there was Harry Thor, not sure I pronounced his name properly. I heard he's a full-time employee or full-time working with the Linux Foundation or the OpenSSF. I do not know exactly his role, but at
I
some
think
time
he's
he was
chief of staff for
right.
UMCAR, the new director.
Oh, okay, cool. And so he made some comments about this threat model, whether we protect the supply chains of enterprises or whether we model the threats for more generally any project consuming open source. And so he suggested to get rid of enterprise here in the title and made a corresponding comment in the objective, right? Where I wrote sometime back is all about integrity of proprietary software components. And so again, he would like to delete the word enterprise, as we do not need to enter the debate right now on the flavor of open source supply chain. My answer to this is, it's driven out of the end user work group, and we were saying in the very beginning we will try to model different architectures for different kind of commercial end users. So kind of he was coming a little bit late providing this comment. So my feeling is we can keep enterprise and stick to what we started with and defined or kind of assumed in the beginning.
Yeah, I agree. I feel our focus is on the downstream consumer, these enterprises, and the end users aren't going to be able to fix all of the open source supply chain problems, but they can manage their risk on things they use and understand kind of what could happen.
Yeah, even though I don't think he meant end users, but he meant other open source projects that also have their open source supply chain. So these are not really end users any longer, right?
Yeah.
But especially if we look at all those additional systems and roles and the private registry and maybe even a QA and production environment, this is not what a typical open source software development project has.
Yeah.
So I would be
That's not the problem we're working on. It is a problem the foundation is addressing, but not the end user working group.
All right.
So I agree with you.
Okay. Well, let's say we said in the beginning. Some software developers.
And maybe under the objective, we just need to be clearer that we are focused in on the end consumer organizations, something around that language.
All right. Let me just try to write this down and really tick it off, right? So we said, all right. To basically reject the suggestion here. How can we improve this here? I mean, I think it's relatively.
It's maybe something in here. I'll take an action to do a suggestion, but I would insert, we're focused in on end users, small to large enterprises that use and consume open source and third-party software.
Okay. Right. Okay.
I'll take that action. And then, so I'm helping lead the security tool belt efforts for the foundation. And that is a more holistic open source supply chain focus. And I eventually want to kind of deputize some of the people that show up here to help out with that larger threat model. But I think this one we need to focus in on. I like the fact that we're trying to add value to consumers.
Okay. Can I write this? You volunteered to
Yes.
further sharpen the objective. Okay. Right then. There was a very valid comment made by Jan Walker-Smith, right? He was basically saying here he typically likes to think of assets only as of data, so secrets, personally identifiable information, and maybe other stuff that is relevant in this PCI regulatory context, right, for this credit card handling systems. And I think this is right. And we discussed in the beginning also to define systems or compute as one, or compute resources as one asset to be protected. And I think this ended up here mostly because of some malicious packages trying to, run crypto miners on the CI/CD environments of commercial software providers. This happened many years back to Tesla, maybe, can't remember. And so that is a valid threat, let's say, but maybe in our specific context, this is more of a niche, especially we were saying in the beginning, we focus on integrity and confidentiality of the proprietary software component as the main threat, because this is, I think, the more urgent, more problematic thing, because once that commercial software is infected, that has a wider impact on downstream users compared to the systems being used for crypto mining. It's bad for that company, but it's nobody else is suffering from that. So I would agree to delete this.
I agree. And I just spent the morning rereading about SolarWinds. So it's supply chain attack is kind of fresh in my mind, attacking the infrastructure.
All right. So we delete this. It's only really about confidentiality and integrity of the source code, not about systems or computing resources. Oops. And gone it is. All right. There was also a question around trust boundaries, which we did not explicitly include here in the diagram. There is kind of one trust boundary kind of highlighted by all these reddish arrows that where we download third-party and open source stuff on all kind of systems, right? So there's definitely one separating the internal systems from external distribution platforms. So that is an obvious one, and we can put this in. I also think there is another trust boundary between the developer machine and all the other shared systems, right? So the source code management, build system, staging, production systems and stuff. Because as we discussed multiple times, those developer machines are used for a wide variety of things, and they have been maybe attacked, subject to phishing attacks, and so there would be some malware running on it. So I think that is also a good trust boundary to have. And I see that you agree here.
I do.
I do not know whether it makes sense so much to, have trust boundaries now, additional ones between the different other blocks or a system, between source code management and build system and private registry and so forth. Don't know.
I think that's going to be a very customized implementation detail that organizations could handle that very differently. Maybe they use an internal federation, so they're passing SAML tokens around. Maybe they don't. I think that's too detailed for this level that we're looking. We're looking kind of at a higher level, as opposed to somebody, looking at somebody's actual reference architecture and, saying, this server talks to AD, this server talks to LDAP, or, an OTP service.
Of course. I mean, this level of detail would be far too implementation specific, right? No, yes. Depending on how they implement SSO, God knows what. But for the general flow of data between source code management and build system and QA and production, or the distribution platform, even here you would say there is no trust boundary required. I don't really know.
At the bank I worked at, we had 3 different LDAPs. So we had a test, a QA, and then a production LDAP. So we did segregate things. So I would imagine other organizations might do that as well. But again, that's an implementation detail. We can say generically, the developer has some relationship with their development environment, and then the source code and build systems. And that's kind of
okay.
It depends. If you're using like Kubernetes, we're using like an OpenShift. You're not going to have direct access to production, but your code might be authorized if it passes checks to go right out. So it's like, I think there's just too much variability for us to try to capture.
All right. So then, in other words, you would agree to just adding these 2 trust boundaries for all the stuff coming from the external world, plus for all, for the developer machines and all the other internal, development related source code management and so forth. Okay.
Yeah, and we can put in some blurb about like network segmentation or zero trust. If we, these are techniques you should potentially consider for higher levels of departmentalization.
Okay. Yeah, I guess these are some general recommendations and safeguards that you would do so I feel this is, there are some kind of best practices that people need to apply and which hold true basically for all, across the board, across all the threads. So it reminds me a little bit of, I think, what Salsa also did. There are some Salsa general safety, security measures around least privilege and hardening all the systems. So, and network segregation goes into the same bucket, I feel.
Yeah,
All right, so I update the diagram to add two trust boundaries. Good. Okay. Yeah, I mean, this was about, okay, this is not so relevant. I mean, he was coming back to insider threads saying they would be in scope. I agree, but not in the first version. We struggle too much anyhow to progress on the document. If we open this box, it will only become more difficult.
Maybe we change out of scope to backlog. So that'll be a 2.0 consideration.
Ah, you're a magician. I see.
Yeah, I agree. We have to focus on just getting a minimum viable product out.
Yeah.
Prove the methodology, and then we can expand scope later.
Hop, hop. Good. Yeah, there's some, this is a comment that is more generally relating to aligning this with the
MITRE.
MITRE. Even though I must say I mean, at least what they have in terms of supply chain compromises, the second one is super high level. It's basically covering just everything. And so linking it to the MITRE would mean to, by means of saying, we refine what they only said on a high level. I can show you. I'm not sure whether you have this on the top of your mind, but I think it's this one here. This is the 2. No, this is the 1. Yeah, right here. Supply chain compromise of software can take place in a number of ways, including manipulation of source code, manipulation of upload distribution mechanisms, replacing compiled releases with a modified version, which is just everything. Not everything maybe, but a lot. And so I think this is exactly where we want to provide added value by refining this a little bit better.
So maybe we state, we are familiar with or aware of the MITRE attack framework, and we're looking at this with an increased fidelity.
Yeah, this is kind of what I answered in my comment, but I think this is something that we can highlight a little bit on the top already. So, because this is a question that people will come up very early in the process of reading the document, and the same holds true probably also for Salsa and the software component verification standard and the Microsoft effort. So I think that there should be kind of a related, okay. What I just add differences to related work. One. And here we would have MITRE ATT CK Salsa over software component verification standard, and then Microsoft. I forgot this acronym.
What, the S2C2F?
Maybe S2C2F, if you say so.
That's the what they donated to the supply chain group. It's a consumer supply chain framework.
So the last bits are trust framework. I suppose the first 3 are clear. Trust framework, something like this. Okay. Okay. All right. I think I leave it like this, and I should have, what? And I just want to have it in track mode. So
Now, their CISA just did release some new guidance around CI/CD. There might be something in there. I haven't had the chance to look at it yet, but I'm pretty sure they probably lean it heavily into the MITRE.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of, I have the feeling, and it's really difficult to keep on top of the things. There's so much overlap between all those initiatives and referencing each other. It's hard to understand at times. All right, very good. You know what? But still, I think he has a valid point. So this should not only be discussed in the beginning of the document, but where possible also in the single threads.
Agreed.
Added section on top to clarify differences between. Okay.
Yeah, that could be just as simple as making a table that has the handful of MITRE things and then lining it up with your taxonomy, just all the elements that are in the taxonomy.
Yeah, yeah. Yes. Either a dedicated table or as part of those existing, you know, within those tables. Yeah. Okay, good. Right. I think we should have something like references here.
Yeah, do we? That would be
yeah. Sometimes I have, sometimes I don't. So this is kind of on case by case. All right. I leave that comment open to not forget it. Then what else? That is one specific example. But I wanted to go into more. I had some before going to the other comments. I would like to discuss other stuff with you. Okay. One is, I mean, it was easy to add table property likelihood, but then it turns out it's anything but easy to fill it. So we only did it in a few times, right?
Yeah.
So for example, high likelihood that there is a lack of guidance for developers on what can and cannot be installed, or lack of bypass. So this is all about, I guess everybody felt that it is very likely developers just install whatever on their machines. And so everybody could, you know, was very positive about this being a high likelihood. But for many others, we don't have anything. Maybe we have it there. I remember we have it once. Malicious commit. We had it another. All right. So yeah, we have it a couple of times, but I really find
it's hard. But we touched briefly on the quantification. It's very subjective, and I would prefer to do something evidence-based. That's a lot of work, and it'll be very hard to find some of that information.
Right. This holds true both for the quantification of the likelihood, but also for the quantification of the impact, right?
Yep.
Both of it is difficult to quantify. I agree.
And maybe we put that into our backlog as future work. You know, how can we better quantify these things, the likelihood and impact? You know, maybe we look at EPSS, the exploitability scoring. So, you know, what can we find where these attacks have been exploited? You know, then that would be kind of evidence that this was more probable or not.
Yeah, but this is, I think, EPSS is related to specific vulnerabilities in shipped software artifacts. And so I don't think this is applicable to high-level threats.
Yes, I agree. I don't know that
Right.
anyone's done any kind of prediction or analysis on historic supply chain attack beyond a listing of here's 20 bad things that happened in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, there are some for those high profile, cases, such as I don't know, for Equifax, the data breach maybe, or also for SolarWinds, and maybe also for the supply chain attack in 2017. What was it again?
What,
On this
not Petra?
yeah, exactly. Not Petya, on this Ukrainian bookkeeping software or so. So for those high profile things, you have some numbers, but those numbers are probably completely exaggerated, and I wonder how well they have been researched. So for Equifax, I remember numbers like the overall cost for the company to overcome the problem in their struts framework was more than 1 billion, but that included a bunch of things. Also, all the lawyers for any litigation, basically all the expenses they had for investigating the problem. They also included counting, the restructuring or rebuilding their security framework. So there is a lot of stuff that just came together, and I don't know how precise this is and how comparable this is. So
maybe we provide kind of a summary towards the top. When you are considering the likelihood and impact, these are some of the factors that could be put into your accounting. And for costs, you're going to have potential regulatory fees. You're going to have legal fees, potentially some type of incident response fee. And then loss of customer reputation and brand damage, all that. So we could maybe put something higher level.
Right. I tried to figure this out here. Where can I put this? So this would be kind of, kind of in the introduction, right, where we explain our methodology and how we decided what to write down. And
you can reduce the likelihood of these happening through these techniques.
So let me start with some high level introduction to this chapter. So clarify, approach chosen, and approach field, and how to document. And then here should come a section or a sentence saying, we do not quantify any likelihood or impact, but the following are typical. Kind of root cause costs for litigations or so, regulatory fines. But feel free to jump in and help me put in some keywords here.
Yeah, the incident response costs. So you're going to have an incident handler. You're going to have cyber insurance costs.